You're listening to the RMPodcast, the official podcast of Red Moon Productions. Here are your hosts, Brandon Davidson, Keith Cheatham, and Sean Sebastian. Enjoy.
Welcome to yet again another episode of the Red Moon Podcast. Coming to you live every single Tuesday night, right here on all your favorite social media networks. At 9 p.m. Eastern, you can catch the audio version downloadable at midnight on Thursdays. I'm one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host, Sean Sebastian, and Brondell Booker. Brondell Booker! Is he related to Booker T?
No.
Brondell Booker T.
One's a last name, one's a first name. It's not how that works, Brandon.
Hey, you don't know. It was a wrestling name.
It's like Keith Urban or
and Booker T was named after
Toby Keith. They're both country singers, but they're not related.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Booker T. Washington.
He's dead.
But that was a first name.
Yeah, that's what I said. That was a first, and this one was a last.
But you could, well.
So that's for they're not related. You would have to have the same last name.
I just defeated my own point. If you're not first, you're last.
Yes.
That's right. Ricky Bobby. That's right. Well, Brondell, thanks for joining us. We got a great show for everybody.
We do.
It's another packed show. We got tons of news to get into.
I know. There's always news in Hollywood.
I'm telling you.
You would think there shouldn't be as bad as they're doing.
Hollywood's going to hell in a handbasket.
Yeah, that's the name of our episode tonight, pretty much. As it is every other week, because there's always something else that just gives us a sign that Hollywood's
something there to remind me.
Thank you, Brondell. That was beautiful. Locks of love. Oh, it wasn't him this week, and it was ready.
Do you not like that song?
Huh?
There's always something there to remind me.
I don't like that song.
Really?
No.
I'm not like it's not a favorite of mine, but I don't hate it.
You know what's funny is I wish I could show a camera
Yeah.
on my computer screen right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That the app is not open, and it worked.
It's
did.
working.
It
Yeah.
did.
I'm telling you, Apple.
Sometimes it does.
they
Sometimes.
screwed it up. They just.
Oh, there it is.
They're,
Sean's disappointed at me.
Sean's over there.
I hit. Well, there it is, and he's like, "No, it's work." Like
I don't want that one.
I don't use that one when it's appropriate. I use that one just whenever.
No, it is working.
I know it's appropriate. That's what I'm saying. I don't use it when it is appropriate. You
All
did.
right.
Hey, Sean's popping his soundboard chair.
He's doing
over there,
good.
and he's
He's
trying
doing
to.
good.
Yeah.
I usually steer clear of that thing.
Yeah,
'Cause
he's
it's technology and that we don't mix.
Well,
Yeah,
I think the Twilight Zone one would have been good for that.
Well, it's too late now. We're not
But
gonna
that's
do
on
that.
the second page, and Keith doesn't flip the pages.
I mean, sometimes I do. It's just there's not enough on there that.
It makes it worth your while.
Yeah.
All
I'm
right.
looking at them now. I'm just like, I mean, I like this one, but
You're going to need a bigger boat.
I don't know when to ever.
I don't
use
know
it.
when we're. Well, I forget. This Twister. We were talking about that last week. We need to add some from Twister on there.
That one, and I mentioned the from Fugitive,
Yes.
Tommy Lee Jones.
I don't care.
Yeah.
That one's a good one.
Yeah.
That is a good one. Actually, another good one. But when do you use it?
I don't have a chance for that one much either.
See, but the ones that you're complaining about not having a place to use it, you could literally use it anywhere.
No, there are times when like if I'm paying attention to what they are, but I don't.
No, you don't.
I just spam this.
We just didn't have it for years, and so now that we have it, you want to use it.
It's yeah.
Oh my gosh!
I just had to check.
What's the
It's,
green
yeah.
K? Is that Kick? What is that?
Green K.
What's the streaming thing we're on with the green K?
It's something Kick.
Is
I
it
think-
Kick?
I think it's Kick.
We got a
We got
new
a mate.
streaming. Oh,
Hello, mate.
Hello, mate.
Hey,
What?
Miley number 40. How you doing, mate?
Is that? Are they based in Australia? I
We
I
don't
don't know. It
They're
just
a
says
game-
they said hello, mate.
Hey,
You stream pretty cool. Well, thanks.
Well, thank you. What was the username?
Miley 40.
Thank you, Miley40.
We
Appreciate
appreciate
it,
it.
mate.
Yeah.
Probably butchering that.
want-
Yeah,
they wanna-
they're probably not going to listen to us anymore.
They want to
after the
follow us
butchering.
if we follow them.
Oh,
Well,
So-
you got to send us a link to follow.
Yeah,
and
we
we'll
don't
do
know
it.
who- we don't know
I
who to
don't know
follow.
if your stream is pretty cool, but
Yeah.
share it to and maybe we'll.
I don't want to get on there and it'd be some like weird protesty videos that I can't agree with.
Not
Now,
that.
That's. I mean, we're
That's
talking
if you're
movies on here.
OnlyFans, we don't want that either.
That's right. Not nudes in the bio. Okay. We don't want none of that.
Are we sure about that though?
We'll talk about it after the show. We'll deliberate on
No,
that.
we don't. We don't want.
you
It's a
did
clean
say,
family show.
you
Clean family show.
That's it. Yeah. True.
Mostly.
You said Miley, right?
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Not that Miley.
Just joking.
They're not watching us anymore.
Yeah.
They quit.
Yeah, they're
She's
done.
done. She
They're
said,
done.
nah.
Alrighty,
Nah.
time to move on to some movie news. But of course, we got our review first.
Yeah, we have.
I meant movie in general, movie
Yeah.
news in general.
Yeah.
We got tons of headlines to get into. We got our review this week, which is, oddly enough, rated fairly well.
Yeah.
And we're kind of in the middle of the ballpark. We're, you'll see where we land after you hear it. But the Ministry of Untimely. It is quite untimely.
It's a hard one to get.
The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare.
There we go.
And it is untimely considering that it came in fourth.
Yeah, it didn't fare well at the bottom. Well,
It did not.
they say that they liked what it made, but yeah.
Ungentlemanly Warfare did not fare well.
Yeah.
So that was in the
Yikes.
box office numbers, but how did it fare on the big screen? How did we review it? Did we like the movie? Is it one that you should go see and support with your patronage? Well, we'll see. Here is our review of, yes, I'll say it one more time, The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare.
Civil War continues to dominate the box office this weekend, coming in again at number 1. But it's no longer the only war film in cinemas, as Guy Ritchie's latest movie, The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, sought to bring some competition. Sadly, Ritchie's newest outing ended up not being much competition in the end, only coming in 4th at the box office. Is The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare really a bust, or was the best movie out at the moment overlooked? Based on the book Churchill's Secret Warriors, the explosive true story of the Special Forces desperados of World War II by Damian Lewis, which details Operation Postmaster, a covert mission to disrupt the German U-boat supply operation in Fernando Po. With documents related to the operation declassified in 2016, the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare is based on true events, though embellishes and exaggerates in the Guy Ritchie way of stylized action and banter-heavy humor. Starring Henry Cavill and Alan Ritchson as Gus March Phillips and Anders Lassen, the men responsible for carrying out Operation Postmaster, the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare is a blend of heist and war film with the Guy Ritchie flair. While entertaining throughout, maintaining a brisk pacing through its 2-hour runtime, the movie is light and fun, though not particularly memorable. Keeping the story simple, the characters and action are fun and kept me engaged along with Ritchie's trademark dialogue. But nothing in the movie stood out as something I haven't already gotten from Guy Ritchie or other movies. Though not his first foray into war films, Ungentlemanly Warfare doesn't feel quite as authentic to me as better movies in the genre. With Ritchie focused on making another stylized action comedy, it's not that the movie has no substance, but I'd have liked more substance in regard to the non-fictional subject matter. The film is fun but lacks tension, and while the stakes were real and helped change the course of the war through weakening Germany's naval forces, we are told the stakes exist and we know them from history, but the movie itself never impresses upon me the significance of the event, and never made me feel those stakes. Cavill and Ritchson alongside the rest of the cast give solid performances. With slick action and slicker dialogue, the characters are humorous and endearing, but lack a lot of depth otherwise. Cavill and Isa Gonzalez, who portrayed Marjorie Stewart, a person who in reality wasn't likely involved in the actual operation, get the meatier emotional development of the cast, but still are lacking compared to their real-life histories. As a brief nitpick, I also was not impressed with Rory Kinnear's performance as Churchill. I can give this a pass as it's not a huge role in the film, but it was Churchill's machinations that put the operation in play, and I've had appreciated a stronger showing. The movie's set pieces are well made, though grossly exaggerated compared to the amount of gunfire that took place during the real-life op. Being a Guy Ritchie movie, this too I can give a pass, as I expected exaggerated set pieces. Though the actual climax was a lot quieter and uneventful in real life. My real gripe with the set pieces weren't with their historical inaccuracy, but with the fact that it was again a lot of things I've already seen before. Ultimately, that was my biggest walkaway from the movie. I've seen it all before, especially from Guy Ritchie. The banter wasn't particularly unique, nor the set pieces or the characters. But it did all feel like Guy Ritchie, and made for an entertaining action espionage film. Better than everything else currently beating it at the box office by a mile. Yet it is still all none too memorable. And for that, I give the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare 2.5 out of 4 stars.
Well, so there we are in the middle of the pack. Really squarely. 2.5 out of 4 stars. Can't get more middle than that. But let's go around. I guess Keith, that was your official review.
Yeah, it was the review of the movie. And I didn't mind it. I liked it for the most part. I just, again, where it comes in at that 2.5 was it just wasn't really much of anything I hadn't seen before.
Right.
Especially being based on a true story where quite a bit of it's embellished, which I expected coming from Guy Ritchie to have that embellishment. And that's fine. It's just, I feel like because there wasn't anything really that special about it, and they don't really give you the meat of the true story, they give you like the action aspect. I'm just like, yeah, it's fine, it's entertaining, but it's not something that I feel like is, amazing.
Sean, where'd you land?
No, I agree. I was at 2.5. I felt like it was entertaining. I enjoyed seeing Henry Cavill and even Alan Richardson, the Jack Reacher. I enjoyed seeing him in a big screen movie for the first time, because I think the only other film that I've even heard of him doing recently is the Angel Studios movie. It's a Christian movie. I forget what it's called.
I'm not sure what it is.
Something about angels. Ordinary Angels is what it's called.
Okay. Has that come out yet? Has that dropped yet?
Yes.
Oh, it has.
It is available.
Okay.
On demand and streaming. I think it's on Amazon, honestly.
Okay.
The one with Hilary Swank?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, wait, no. Isn't that about the family and like the snow, or are they trapped in the... Oh, wait, no, that's something else.
A struggling hairdresser finds a renewed sense of purpose when she meets a widowed father working hard to care for his 2 daughters.
And he's the widowed father.
There's a bunch of snow and
bet
stuff.
you-
So
there is
Oh, wait,
some snow.
that is it.
Yeah,
That is
yeah.
it. Yep.
So, I thought the movie had good... I thought it could have been a lot better. The thing is like a movie like that, I'm comparing it to The Inglourious Bastards, which is a fictional story, but done so much better.
Right.
And I think one of the things that irked me about this movie the most was that, and again, if it's based on a true story, how loosely that is, I don't know, but, all of the characters survive, and I find that extremely hard to believe. That not even the hired help from the prince or whatever, none of his men even died in this movie. It was literally every good guy in the movie survives, which I thought was a little far-fetched. But and some of the other thing, I mean, them just walking around and blasting people and nobody hears it, nobody sees it. It's like they didn't have silencers on machine guns back then. So it was.
It's kind of. I don't know about that. I don't know enough about the tech.
It was.
And whether or not
I just thought that was a little far fetched. But there were so many other moments that I felt like were just so predictable.
Yeah.
And it's like, we can't blow that ship up because it just happened to get armor plated, even though nobody knew this was coming. And I'm like, that's just part of the story to make this not end immediately.
Right.
And so there were just a lot of moments like that. I was telling Keith, like, I did not know that this was a Guy Ritchie film until his name popped up at the end.
Really?
And no, going into it, I had not seen that. I didn't read that. I didn't know that it was.
It just seemed like it had him written all over it.
That's the thing is, like, I didn't feel like it was anything like his other films.
I kept thinking of Sherlock a lot during some of the different banter scenes and stuff.
Yeah, I didn't think it felt like Sherlock. I didn't think it felt like The Gentleman or Snatch or any of the other films that he's done. So it was a surprise for me because I was like, actually, I don't think it felt like it had the flair that some of his other films have. They're not all good.
And it's funny
but they all feel like him.
I wonder if he dialed that back.
Because it's a true story.
True story, and this is his third apparent, like, what will be his third flop if it doesn't pick up at the box office. And I don't know if he was just playing it safer or felt like he needed to. It doesn't seem like it in terms of, I guess, the quote-unquote build-up to the movie. I mean, it seems like they were advertising like anything else. In fact, I thought because it had Henry Cavill in it and Alan Ritchson in it from, Reacher, I'm like, with his newfound success and stardom, I was like, oh, surely this is going to be a decent, number 2 slot, if that. I thought Civil War would edge it out, but I thought this was definitely going to beat Abigail, and totally called that wrong.
Yeah, this is a $60 million budget.
Yeah,
and they're at less than 10 right now.
I don't think it's coming.
It's crazy.
It's not gonna. Yeah, it's just gonna keep declining. It's not gonna be
sad because I really think this would have probably been a better streaming release. With those kind of numbers. But ultimately,
honestly, it kind of felt like a streaming movie.
It did.
Like, it didn't feel like a blockbuster.
I liked it better than Civil War, but I mean, it didn't feel like a blockbuster release. And I mean, it's come behind even Godzilla, which has been out a couple weeks. So, granted, that one's more popular than it should be.
That's tough because I'm like, this movie did have a better story, or at least a better played out story than Civil War, but Civil War aesthetically I enjoyed more than this movie.
Which I think a lot of people would agree with.
I think, that's fair. I do agree with that.
I think aesthetically, Civil War, especially on a smaller budget, did a lot more. But the weird thing about this is, I think you brought it up perfectly with Inglourious Bastards. It felt like a watered down Inglourious Bastards.
Yes.
It's like a cheap knockoff.
Yeah.
And I hate to say that because I don't think the movie is bad. I settled on 2.5 as well. But I just it's forgettable, and it's one of those movies where, as it kept playing out, every single scene that went by, like the perfect example is the scene of them on the train and them stealing the briefcase. Like everything was played out well, and it wasn't laughable but it was just, I've seen all that before. Like there was nothing new or interesting about it, and even to the point where they're in the back of the train and she keeps looking out the window to see if anybody's caught on to what they're doing. Like, the stakes never felt so high that I was really anxious. And like you said, that was even doubled down on by, I think, the director, by the fact that, true to life or not, no deaths were done, were actually handled throughout the film. Like, everybody who you got to know survived. And I never really felt like there was this kind of impending danger.
At a certain point, you're like, nobody's going to die, so what am I worried about?
Exactly. Like, they're going to make it through. And also, for it to be based on a true story, I was a little bit more disappointed with, if you're going to go this bombastic, then it's got to be either, because some of the fight choreography was really well done. Again, nothing new, but it was okay. But I'm like, you're going to have to either go way above and beyond bombastic to where I'm like, there's no way this happened, or at least pick a story where that's the case, where it's kind of almost unbelievable. Or the moments that you realize after the fact, I think you were the one that was telling me this, Keith, when you were writing the review, some of the moments he pontificated on and embellished are just things that really didn't add to the plot anyway. The whole like kind of spy angle that Isa Gonzalez and her partner go throughout the film does it. It's a nice little kind of espionage thriller aspect from the get go, but it's watered down by the end. It doesn't really play out in any larger part of the narrative, other than to give them like another MacGuffin that they have solved.
Yeah, that whole secondary plot didn't happen.
It just didn't motivate me enough throughout the film.
Historically, I didn't understand how. Okay, so the one character that's the like the Nazi that's in charge of the port. He was also in Inglourious Bastards.
Yeah, he was Stiglitz.
Yeah, Stiglitz.
Hugo Stiglitz.
Yes. So,
which the very first mission that they're on reminded me of that, because they go to rescue a guy, and granted, it's more drawn out in this film for like a whole set piece.
Yeah.
But they're going to get a guy out of prison. I'm like,
that's exactly like Inglourious Bastards.
Yeah, exactly.
But like his character is so disgusted by the fact that the woman who's a Jew was a Jew. Like that was, it wasn't that she pulled one over on him. It was the fact that she was a Jew. Yet he's willing to do all these dealings with a black man.
Yeah, that whole plot line was made up.
I'm just like, that doesn't historically. It doesn't make the Germans hated the Africans just as much as they hated the Jews.
I thought the same thing. Even when they're on the train and the one general tells her, "I'll take no lady handles her own bag," and then he comes up and steps in his way. Like
at least chivalry still exists.
I thought the same thing. It's like he wouldn't accept that.
He would not.
He would have said, "You let this, you know what? Carry your suitcase."
Exactly.
Yeah, that was weird. And see, again, Inglourious Bastards, the Frenchman that's helping with the theater, the Nazis are disgusted by him that he's working at the theater.
Yep.
And it's like, we don't even want to have our thing here at your theater if you got a black man working here, so he has to go and hide in the projection booth.
Yep.
And it's like, that's the real Nazis.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And also, to add on to that, there was the it was another thing that they the telltale sign when she gives up her Jewishness or her the fact that she's not a German.
It was like
it was just like when she's like,
when they're at the bar.
He said 3 glasses, and the German 3 is this, and was like, she comes over and says some phrase in a song in his ear, and of course it's Yiddish, not German.
Yeah.
And so as soon as he picks up on that, he's the jig is up now. He's got her, and I was like, this is just borrowed. Like this is exact copy of what we've already seen before. Again, and that's what I hate is I hate to compare it so much to what it does borrow. It seems so much to borrow from, but you can't help but compare it in that regard.
Oh no,
you just it's almost a given.
And for a movie that also included so many characters, I understand that some of them were made up, but at the end of the film, it does give you a little bite of the real history in showing some of the real characters in their real life photos, and it kind of tells what ended up happening to them. It only really goes through about 3 of the main characters, and again, that if you're gonna make up characters and put them in the film and give them such a huge role in the film, then maybe don't show what happened to the real people at the end because you can't include these made up characters because nothing really happened to them. They're fake.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm like, that was one of the things I'm just like, well, okay, so if the black spy, which I can't remember his name, but he was in Dune. I can't, again, if you're going to include that character and give him such a huge role, man, it kind of sucks that you didn't tell what happened to him at the end of the movie. And it's like, well, we can't because he's made up.
Right.
Well, then don't show the other people either.
Or if you're going to do that, at least make certain traits of these made-up characters a blending of like, here's who stood in for this person and why we told the story through there. Some kind of blurb like that where at least, and again, that's another instance where I hate to say it, but add some flair to that. Like actually show at the end some other part of them. Because I told Keith too, I felt off because Isa Gonzalez and him, they had such a partnership that it made it seem like they were into each other. And then at the end, when you're reading her slate, she marries Henry Cavill's character,
but they don't have any inkling of
They have like one little instance at the end where they kind of look at each other.
Because that's how Brandon, even though she was a real person and even though she was involved with the SOE group, which is like Cavill's like that like they said there's no like any record that she was ever involved with this specific operation. So it's like they just pulled her in for this movie because they knew they got married. So it's like, even
they
though,
also had to have a woman.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
you're right.
So like she's a
I
real
hate to say
person.
it.
She did work with them, but she just never had anything to do with this actual story.
Yeah. And you're right, Sean. It was like that's kind of what it, especially when they show the scene where she's like the best shot and she's firing off all these weapons, and I'm like, clearly this is a girl boss moment. That's all it was, and it just
never happened.
It doesn't add anything to the story other than to just say, see, we got the strong female character in here, and I'm like,
well, considering she never actually uses those skills,
right?
She literally never fires a gun.
Well, he was trying to convince the guy that was letting them borrow the ammunitions and his men that, hey, she's as good a shot as them, if not better.
I get it.
But you're right.
But it's like, well, when are we going to see her actually use that shot?
It's like, what was the point of this whole scene other than to have that, like, bad girl moment?
And I hate it because I'm like, so she has to be really good with weapons because weapons, man thing. She's got to be a great shot in order to prove that she's just as good as the men. Whereas it's like, she can't have conniving skills and espionage skills. That
seduction skills.
Seduction.
Yeah.
They can't use that as like, that.
No, that's sexist.
Right.
Right. Well, they spend more time on the seduction than they do on her being a girl
firing the
boss.
weapons.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
Alrighty, guys. I mean, look, we didn't hate the movie.
No,
it's
no.
nothing you haven't seen before. If you haven't seen those
It was
other movies
average.
we were talking about, then by all means check this out.
Yeah.
I do think with what is being offered right now at the box office, this is a decent one to go and see, more so than I think Civil War.
Nah, go see Kong and Godzilla.
Yeah, oh gosh, yeah. Far and away better than that movie. I think way more entertaining. I mean, this one kept my attention, and I was thoroughly enthralled. It just, by the end of the film, it was lackluster.
Yeah.
But yeah, go check it out. It's definitely worth some love at the box office. Doesn't look like it's going to break even, though. And it doesn't look like it's going to get any more love
It's
after the
failing.
opening weekend. Alrighty, let's move into our headlines. Yay!
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to do something weird, as I always do with the
What are we doing?
headlines. Jumping in the middle of the pack.
We're going
I was getting ready
Instead
to
of
joke
for
and
the-
say that, and you
Yeah.
actually said it.
I am. I'm going to jump in
start
the
from the middle. this
instead of
time.
going from the bottom up, we're going from the middle.
Instead of in the
out.
middle. That's right.
Middle out.
Middle out. Middle out. I wanted to talk about the Oscars rule change for a sec because really, thankfully, this article that I will have linked in the description below, it kind of lays it out pretty plain Jane what the changes are. Nothing major, but some that are notable that I think are. This has nothing to do with their qualifications of. I mean, that's a whole nother, crazy story that we've covered before as far as the certain DEI requirements, I guess you could call it, that films have to abide by. This has nothing to do with it. This is just generic or general category rules that they've laid out. So pretty much they just want to run through these really quickly. Oh gosh, I had to switch to reader mode because a Zaxby's ad popped up. I don't want your damn sandwich. All right, here we go.
I don't want their sandwich either. I want their chicken fingers.
Yeah,
Yeah. Amazing.
yeah, it is a good chicken
amazing.
fingers.
Who eats their
Amazing.
sandwich?
Their Zax sauce is pretty. I like the cane sauce though.
Oh,
I
okay.
can't lie.
I like the Zax sauce better.
You like Zax sauce better than cane
I like
sauce?
Zaxby's better than Raising Cane's.
Ooh, I don't.
I think people
See,
are.
the
I
advertisement
used to.
did its job. We're
Yeah.
talking about it.
Yeah, we did. Oh, shoot. We're guilty. We're good. All right. Oscar changes. So they expanded the theatrical run of 7 days, consecutive or non-consecutive, in 10 of the top 50 U.S. markets, no later than 45 days after their initial release. So it's now 10 instead of, I think, the top 5. For late-in-year films with expansions after January 10th, 2025, distributors must submit release plans to the Academy for verification. Release plans for late-in-the-year films must include a planned expanded theatrical run, as described above, to be completed no later than January 25th. So they're kind of broadening that window for late-in-the-year releases, which, granted, I think ever since they switched, this happened back in COVID, since they switched it to like a March timeline instead of early February, they expanded it, I think, through the first month anyway.
Yeah,
to be
it says
included.
that just that their theatrical expanded run has to be completed no later than
Then
January
January 24th.
So yeah,
Non-U.S. territory releases can count towards 2 of the top 10 markets, but qualifying non-U.S. markets include the top 15 international markets. So if you're going to use international markets as a qualifier, it has to be the top 15
yeah,
international
because
markets.
it says top 50 for U.S. So
And then here's where it gets a little bit juicier for the actual films themselves. Qualifying animated feature films now submitted in the international feature film category are eligible for consideration in the animated feature film category if eligibility requirements for that category are outlined. Both are met in those categories. So now you can actually have a feature, almost like animated features.
you could submit it for both now,
Yeah.
basically.
Can win animated feature of the film of the year and best picture.
and international.
International.
Right.
Yeah. Well, he's saying like before you could do best
But
animated
before-
and best picture.
Yeah.
Now you can do best animated and international.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Best international animated.
Yep.
The new eligibility period for the international feature film category is November 1st, 2023 to September 30th, 2024. In the music original score category, 3 composers will be allowed to receive individual statuettes if, in rare circumstances, they all contributed fully to the score. Previously, 3 composers were required to submit as a group. The rules now clarify the definition of a group as a recognized band. the shortlist will increase from 15 to 20 titles. I think that's kind of interesting considering that you can have multiple composers working on a film.
Yeah.
And if they all contributed, then they can each receive a statuette.
Yeah, it's no longer just the one. Yeah.
That is actually, I think, that's pretty cool. In the writing categories, a final shooting script will now be required for submission. I thought that was a little odd. I'm like, what do you mean that wasn't required before?
Yeah,
Like,
you could probably
I
have
would
a
just send them a
rough draft.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's
Yeah.
kind of weird because I'm
That
like,
is stupid.
most people know that your shooting script is going to change drastically from your actual rough draft and just on the set in general.
It could mean because like they do change on the set, so they might be like mean you have to submit whatever after the fact, like whatever changes after on the set, rather than
Or maybe if you do the shooting script and then if there are changes in the film that don't match, they can at least make. I guess that maybe gives them
That's what
a
I'm
little
saying.
bit
I
more
think they need
emphasis
to
on
have that, like when they submit the movie, like you still have to have like that.
how
one
much of
with the
this was
changes.
actually creatively
Yeah.
applied before the shooting process.
Yeah.
Changes were also made to the testimonial awards presented at the Governor's Awards. The Irving G. Thalberg Memorial Award, given to a creative producer whose body of work reflects a consistently high quality of motion picture production, will now be presented as an Oscar statuette. The definition of the Gene Herschelt Humanitarian Award was revised to clarify the broad term humanitarian efforts. The award will be given to an individual in the motion picture industry whose humanitarian efforts have brought credit to the industry by promoting human welfare, contributing to rectifying inequities. Oh, joy. 2 special awards presented at the Scientific and Technical Awards have been renamed. Gordon E. Sawyer Award to Scientific and Technical Lifetime Achievement Award and the John A. Boner Award to Scientific and Technical Service Award.
I bet those have some parts of their past the Academy no longer
are
proud of.
That's what it seems like to me.
It's
Anytime
like-
you have a renaming of an award where you omit the past, it's like, we can't.
It's got
dredge
when
up
you
those
make it a
people.
generic name like Scientific and Technical Lifetime Achievement Award. It's like, that person did something they don't want. They no longer condone, so they had to change it to something generic and bland and stupid.
And I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, Gordon E. Sawyer, John A. Boner, those are just old middle-aged
Sawyer
white
Boner
men.
Award.
That might be
Yeah.
Bonner. There's 2 N's
It's
in there.
Bonner, yeah.
Oh, Bonner.
The
My
B-O-N-N.
bad. I'm sorry. Whoops. Sorry, it's not Boner
So
anymore.
the 2 N's. Bonner.
You just got boner on the brain.
But I like how they expanded the qualifications for Best Picture, like especially the theatrical run of 7 days, consecutive or non-consecutive. So it's cool. It's like as long as it's been in theaters in 10 of the top 50 markets, for 7 days, then it's eligible. And it's like that makes it easier for places like Netflix, Amazon, Apple to be eligible, because it's like, okay, now all we have to do is show our movie for 7 days in 10 theaters that are in the top 50 markets, and we're good to go. So
Yep. And also, just throwing it out there, too, that Dallas replaced Miami as far as the top 10 markets go. Apparently
well, it says
was
it's the top 50. It has to be 10 of the top 50.
but it just Dallas did edge out Miami as far as the top 10. Because
Okay.
if you're in the top 10, at least for that theatrical run, that's all you have to meet.
Yeah.
But ultimately,
Well, no, it just says as long as you're in 10 of the top 50. Like, that's all you have to meet is just, you don't have to be in the 10.
I thought-
it doesn't say top 10. It says
I thought it had to be the
10
top
of
10.
the top 50.
No, you have to
Okay.
be in 10 of the top 50 markets. So as long as you have 10 of those top 50.
but it is kind of
you're good.
interesting that
Yeah.
Dallas beat out Miami for top 10 now.
Yeah, no, that is.
Just shrinking market down there in Miami by a little
Yeah,
bit. Or
yeah.
Dallas is growing.
Maybe.
But no, that was all we wanted to mention there. Just bringing that story to the forefront because hey, Oscars, they are a change.
No, they would. I thought that's interesting. Most of those changes, I think are better to help people be recognized. Some of them, like the last one, seems kind of sketchy.
Yep. Which doesn't surprise us too much in this day and age of wokeness. But which wanted to also bring about some news. It's not really a headline, but we at least wanted to put it out there because we were covering the story of it. But that Disney's board
remains
still
the same.
Remains the same. Business as usual. Peltz didn't get his way.
Nelson Peltz did not gain that. They said that he got 31% of the vote, which means that,
And Bob Iger ended up with like 91%, so easily beat him out.
Yeah, so no two. I haven't seen whether he's going to continue fighting. This is the second time,
right?
They've been.
He withdrew the first time.
Yeah,
though.
yeah.
This one was the first one he brought it to a board or to a shareholder vote.
Now, whether he continues on to try to get those 2 seats, it's just one of those things where Disney and the board members, shareholders have elected to continue on. They think Iger's going to steer the ship back into the right direction. I think they're sorely mistaken, and they'll find that out.
While their stock price is up, it is below the S&P 500.
Yeah.
The average of the S&P 500. So they're still trending lower in terms of not nearly where they probably could be if they were run, I think, better.
Yeah, and I think some of this plays into our top headline that we'll get to later.
Yes, we're going to get into that. But I also wanted to bring up I think we're going to jump to the third headline just to get it out of the way because it's interesting. And we're not really much known about it other than that Tarantino dropped the movie critic. He's kind of abandoned that.
Yeah.
And is now working on trying to figure out what his so-called final film is going to be.
Yeah. Apparently this one wasn't it, and it's fun because it's not the first. I mean, he's had a couple projects that have gone by the wayside. Most notably, everyone mentions like Kill Bill Volume 3 and 4 that he said years ago he would like to do.
The rated R Star Trek.
The rated R Star Trek. He had at one point he said he wanted to make a remake of I think it's Faster Pussycat Kill Kill, which is like one of those 70s B like basically what all of his movies are based off of are those old pulp espionage movies and such. So,
but yeah, it does kind of surprise me only because, and maybe just because I maybe didn't follow Tarantino as much back when, before we were doing the podcast and his other movies came out. So I don't know how many other projects he's kind of, turned down or put on the shelf.
Yeah.
But it was interesting to me, and maybe it was only because the buzz around this being his final film. This one picked up a lot more publicity of people saying, "Oh, his final film is going to be the movie critic," and they kind of described it as it's a mixture of who Siskel and Ebert. I think it was kind of like an Ebert type with Robert De Niro's character in Taxi Driver, and what would happen if he was just this very cynical type of movie critic and I guess went off the wall. I don't know, but obviously now that it's put to bed, we'll never know. And I don't know. I have a hard time really thinking that it's his final film. I mean, part of me when I saw this was just like, are you just turning this down because you're so worried that you don't want this to be what you go out on?
Yeah.
And if you're putting so much emphasis and you're stressing yourself out because you think, oh, well, this is my swan song. It's got to be really, really good.
Yeah.
And I've got to feel like all my ducks are in a row and before I go into this project. And that's where I'm just like, are we never going to get this film? Is he going to die almost in the same way we thought Cameron was going to die before Avatar Way of Water came out?
I think we will. I actually like it better when there's bigger gaps between Tarantino's films because I feel like that's when he gets to find something more unique.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was 5 years ago?
Yeah.
It's been a while.
Maybe, yeah. Well, but he used to, I'd have to look, but I feel like he's had longer gaps than that, but maybe not. He's not really been making, in the grand scheme of things, compared to us and other directors.
Every 3 years he was popping one out.
Well, he's only got the 10.
Yeah, but so 94, if you do that every 3 years from 94, that's about right.
Yeah, that's about right. Let's say, because when you consider that he's really not been making
early
movies
90s, because I guess, was it Reservoir Dogs?
Reservoir Dogs is his first movie.
And then Pulp Fiction, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And then it was Jackie Brown, then Kill Bill, which he only counts Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2 as one movie.
Yeah. Reservoir Dogs was 92. So that's probably about 3 or 4 years. I don't know. I'm interested to see what he has to.
Pulp Fiction was 94.
Yeah,
so that's 2 years.
Well, that one, but I'm talking about like other in between. Like I said, I don't know if that was his longest gap or not.
Let's look it up.
But I thought the same in a sense that it's like, is this something that he's just trying to find that just like turning down Star Trek because it's like, oh, I can't make the last film, the 10th film, Star Trek, or I understand also an idea of like if
like I guess the muse doesn't hit you if you're not
Right.
feeling about it, or
Yeah.
you get it because I mean writers have abandoned works too. That's why
Yeah,
they.
and that's
it's
the thing.
so have musicians
It's
because that's
weird
why you
because-
get all that stuff after they die.
Right.
They're like, look at all this unfinished content.
And I'll be honest with you, it's like my heart wasn't torn when I heard this because I wasn't thinking.
yeah, I'm not attached to whatever this is yet.
And I'm like, if it didn't work out, it's like I trust Tarantino, I trust his process because of the movies he's put out, and he's got every single one of them are pretty much hits. The only one I really dislike isn't terrible; it's just kind of boring. And that's the Hateful Eight.
Hateful Eight, yeah.
But other than that, I'm like, I wasn't so torn by this. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're never going to get his final film. But it is just kind of interesting because I'm like, I felt like there was much more buzz surrounding this because it's his supposed final film. But I wasn't so keen on the idea when he first mentioned it that I was like, it's weird because I kind of was like, that's what.
Yeah.
After all the movies you've come out with, I was like,
Yeah.
you're going to go out on one called The Movie Critic.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, it kind of felt on the nose. It's like you're gonna go out
Right.
with your last movie being a movie about someone who critiques
Like-
movies.
yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
And it has the longest gap was the 6 years between Jackie Brown and Kill Bill. But that is the longest because the rest of them are, on average, I'd say about 3, counting
Okay.
them up.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I respect you if you don't think this is gonna work. If
Yeah.
you don't think it's coming together right, and you're
Yeah.
willing to scrap it, go for it. Because Hollywood's not doing that much lately. They're just
No.
pushing out whatever crap they.
And honestly,
come up with.
and I doubt he would ever admit to this if he did, or I don't think he does really watch other directors. But I'm like, if I'm sitting back and I'm watching Scorsese and I'm watching Ridley Scott
Yeah.
pump out Napoleon,
they're just pumping out stuff
and
that it's like that's well
Killers of the
made,
Flower
but it's
Moon, I'm like,
nothing
it has,
impressive.
It has nothing on what their earlier works are, and they're drab, terribly boring movies.
Well, and that's exactly why he said he wanted to do 10 and done because he wanted to stop before he became
A burnout.
but something where he's just churning out crap. And I mean, to be fair, he really doesn't have a bad movie. There's some I like less than others, but I would watch every single one of his movies again.
100%.
I think Hateful Eight's the one that like I have the least amount of fondness for, but even it's not bad.
Yeah, same,
Yeah.
same. And it's funny because even like as I was becoming a fan and going through like Kill Bill and then in Glorious Bastards, and
Yeah.
then I'm sitting here thinking, okay, he's got this whole chapter thing that he's going to keep doing, and no, he changed it up in Django.
Yeah.
Django doesn't have that, and then of course he changes it up again, and A Hateful Eight. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously you can watch a Tarantino film and know it's a Tarantino film. He's got all of his threads throughout, but
Yeah,
there's
for
still so many things where you're just like, yeah, like you said, his movies are well put together. So yeah, I'm interested to see what he ends up landing on, what his final movie will be.
What will it be?
I wasn't, like I said, too keen on that idea of the movie critic, but I'm curious to see what he does land on him when it comes out. I honestly almost wish it is like what I remember from his other movies, which is never hearing anything about it, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden there's like a poster or a trailer drop, and then you're like, oh,
Yep.
that's the new Tarantino. Sweet, I'm ready. I'm on board.
I know, sadly, we live in the days of where everything's constantly just in your face on news. You get all the rumors of everything that may not even be true, like Tom Cruise being in Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Well, what was it? Oh gosh, my buddy at work today told me it was hilarious. So somebody was joking around about Civil War.
Yeah.
And they were talking about how they were like, this is the worst Marvel movie I've ever seen. Captain America is not even in it.
That's awesome.
It's like they tried to freaking get Kirsten Dunst to come back from Spider-Man 2.
Yeah.
And
just
she's in
terrible.
it, and she's terrible. It's like you don't even see Peter Parker. I was like, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny. But yeah, no, I'm curious to see what happens. We'll see. We'll stay tuned. Real quick, before we move on to our final main headline, other one of note, because I know y'all have seen it, and we've all got an opinion.
Everybody's seen it.
Not a major topic of discussion, but it needs to be talked about. Wolverine,
Deadpool
and Wolverine.
Deadpool and Wolverine.
I'm butchering
It's
it.
okay.
I'm butchering it.
It's okay.
What'd y'all think?
I'm scared.
I don't know. I liked it.
I liked the
There were
trailer.
several things about the trailer that I was kind of like, okay, like I can see the path at which maybe they're trying to write things in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and using Deadpool to do that would be a hilarious.
Oh,
that'd be
yeah,
a hilarious
I
way to pull the
100%
trigger
agree.
and cancel everything out. But I'm not somebody who follows all the comic books, but when I was reading about a lot of the scene by scene moments in the trailer, and having like the carcass of the giant Ant-Man and being from Old Man Logan.
Mention everything.
And
I'm
just like, yeah, see, that's like the things that if they are paying that close attention to comics, maybe they're going to get it right. And Ryan Reynolds has been all about that. So I'm kind of maybe, but the thing is, I can understand how that would scare you though, because it's like, oh, you're showing me all the things that you know is going to get a fanboy excited.
All those things were in all the other trailers, and that's why I'm terrified, because I'm like, every time I see a trailer and I see all these little Easter eggs that make me think, oh, they're going to fix the story by doing this, and then I watch Ant-Man Quantumania, and none of the Easter eggs that are in the trailer actually matter for the plot.
Yeah, they're not used the way that you thought they were going to be used.
And it's not that, because again, that's a dangerous thing too, to be like, oh, well, I just didn't have it the way I wanted it, so I don't like it. The problem isn't that I didn't get what I wanted. The problem is the story you produced was garbage.
Yeah.
And I don't think this will be garbage. I agree. Like I think it'll be an entertaining Deadpool movie no matter what. What just makes me nervous is them to tout it as like under this fix of Marvel.
Yeah.
I'm like, will it be that? That I don't know. I think I'll be entertained. I think Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds are going to do a great job with that dynamic and being Wolverine and Deadpool, because they both nail the characters, and I think that dynamic from the comics will translate really well in the movie because they do know those characters. I just, like I said, I fear some of the other, like seeing like the TVA and Ant-Man, which is from like the Old Man Logan comics, and seeing all these other characters from the Fox X-Men movies, because I mean they have the little cameos of like all of them from other movies. I'm like, this is really cool. This is a brilliant way, especially even involving the TVA from Loki. Like that's something that should have happened in Multiverse of Madness from the get-go.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, but I don't know. I don't know if I can trust them. That's where I'm nervous.
I know. I mean, it'd be fitting to have Deadpool be the one that just kind of breaks everything, and they have to start
being able
over.
to break the fourth wall and knowing that he's a fictional
calls
character.
out Feige once in the trailer. I thought that was great, but
I mean, specifically it was for a Coke reference.
Yeah.
I mean, it was funny.
But I mean, it's funny. But I don't know. It's like I think
knowing his love for the Deadpool character, and I mean, you already saw it in the end of the last movie, but when he goes and shoots the Deadpool he was in, what was that, Wolverine?
And it was in X-Men Origins.
X-Men Origins.
Yeah.
And it's like, the fact that he has such disdain for how they butchered the character makes you think, okay, if he loves that character as much and they give him a little bit more reins to rein in where, you know, the rest of Marvel has gone wrong now.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of interested to see not only if he is the one that course corrects, but this is the only major Marvel movie we're getting all year. So there's a lot of eggs in this basket right now that are riding on this.
And knowing that because they're doing a ton of reshoots for Captain America 4, they're kind of postponing things. I'm like, if this is successful and if it does set them up to right all the wrongs like they want it to, which would make me happy, then they still have to put their money where their mouth is and do the rest of the movies.
Continue on.
And I feel like maybe that's another big reason why this is the only one this year, because they can see how it does say, oh, everyone loved this. It sets all these things up, so let's get to work on fixing the rest of these movies. Hopefully, again, this is a pipe dream because I don't trust Iger
or Feige,
anymore at this point. But we'll see. I mean, because everything I've seen from the trailer, I'm just like, okay, yeah, that's awesome. The villain is Cassandra Nova, who is basically
I've seen a lot of people mentioning her.
Basically, different version of Professor X, isn't she?
Well, she's basically, it's a complicated origin story, but she's simplistically his evil twin, not actually like his biological twin, but she's the antithesis. I can't
Antithesis?
say it. Yes, thank you. Of basically everything he is. She wants to destroy like everything that he loves, and it's just like the exact opposite, but she's extremely powerful. She is a cool villain from the comics. But again, it's like, did you choose her because that's a logical villain to have, or did you choose her because, well, we got to have a powerful woman?
Right.
So, and those are the things that, again, with him, like you said, with Ryan Reynolds, I feel like he's less concerned with that, but at the same time, he's still under Feige, who is. So
yeah, and ultimately the culture, that I don't think he's immune to the cultural push, at least from our DEI brothers and sisters in the upper echelon that have to push that some way, some form or another.
Yeah.
And they'll make sure they get it in there. And that's I mean, look, it's kind of funny to think because if you go back to the time when the first Deadpool came out, the idea of what Deadpool represented to superheroes of being the anti-hero and breaking the fourth wall, but also breaking the norms and conventions of the nice and tidy, this is your Hulk Hogan version of, eat your vitamins and your vegetables, or take your vitamins and eat your vegetables. It's like Deadpool was he's the crass, cussing up a storm, violent, ultra violent, superhero, anti-hero. And yet it's funny that even he still has to fit within this world that we live in.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how it teeters on that, or if they don't toe that line.
Yeah.
And we don't get that kind of treatment with his story or his character.
It's not far off, I don't think either. Is it June?
June or July.
Yeah,
it's definitely one of the...
It's coming up. I mean, I definitely want to see it.
Actually, get the actual
I was
date
pulling it
on
up.
that. I thought it was July. I know it's a summer blockbuster, though.
I think also...
Oh, it's July 26th.
In the trailer, I feel like there's a lot of things that we aren't seeing, too. Because Josh Brolin has already said that he is coming back as Cable in the next Deadpool movie. And you've got the rumor about Henry Cavill playing a version of Wolverine as a cameo.
Oh, there's definitely, I think, a lot we're not seeing.
I think there's going to be a lot more, too, that we're just not getting.
As much as people said this was I mean, Ryan Reynolds tweeted it out that this was the first trailer. I'm like, it was more of a teaser than it was an actual full-on trailer. And not in a bad way. I'm actually okay with that. I don't want to see too much.
Yeah.
Especially when it pertains to something like Deadpool, where, to me, that was where 2 fell short. 2 was a little bit too much like the first one, not enough new stuff, and the jokes were kind of the same, along the same lines as the first movie. It was more of the same. So I was like, 2 didn't impress me much. Yeah. This one, I think, has the chance and the ability, especially with how much of a gap there's been between 2 and 3. So we'll see. Ultimately, I think we're mainly optimistic. But finally, we wanted to get all that out of the way to head into our final dismal headline. That's right. The big one of the night happens to be Hollywood's days are numbered. What? Yes. Once again, we're ticking down the doomsday clock that is Hollywood. Precisely, there are a couple different things. Again, we'll have the articles linked in the description below, but we have one from Christian Toto, an article from him, and even Seinfeld. Jerry Seinfeld has got a new streaming movie coming out soon. I kind of wanted to start off with his comments because they're a little bit more lighthearted, but also take jabs at the industry. And funny enough that he's, like most people who take jabs once they get a deal with streaming, they like to go after the big Hollywood players. But he was specifically saying, it was totally new to me. I thought I had done some cool stuff, but it was nothing like the way these people work, Seinfeld said, getting into the movie industry after so many years of focusing on other entertainment endeavors. They're so dead serious. They don't have any idea that the movie business is over. They have no idea. Film doesn't occupy the pinnacle in the social cultural hierarchy that it did for most of our lives. When a movie came out, if it was good, we all went to see it. We all discussed it. We quoted lines and scenes we liked. Now we're walking through a fire hose of water just trying to see. And he continued on, I've done enough stuff that I have my own thing, which is more valuable than it's ever been. The comedian went on. Stand-up is like you're a cabinet maker, and everybody needs a guy who's good with wood. There's trees everywhere, but to make a nice table, it's not so easy. So the metaphor is that if you have a good craft and a craftsmanship, you're kind of impervious to the whims of the industry. And I like where he's comparing himself there as to, ultimately it's like he doesn't have to fall back on anything because he's already has a library, and obviously commercially he's been successful in being a comedian. But he also, to go back to his comments about the film industry, I find it kind of interesting because it seems like what we've heard underlying in the industry when it's competing for its place amongst the streaming giants nowadays, or everybody, even the major players, jumping in on the streaming game, trying to have their own streaming service and finding it harder to compete. It's funny that he likens it to an industry that just kind of has lost its focus. It doesn't realize that it's not the juggernaut it used to be.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
That ultimately, I liked his analogy of the fire hose, that it's like there's so much content out there now, and it's just you're bombarded with it that you just don't have. It's not like when a movie comes out, you don't have that social fabric anymore that ties it together and makes it a societal. I mean, when you're quoting lines from Lord of the Rings or Back to the Future or Jurassic Park or tons of movies that we all saw as kids, at Ghostbusters. I mean, tons of these films that have memorable lines. It's not that there aren't films now that have it, but nobody's watching the same thing.
Yeah.
Because there's just so much content and you're flooded and bombarded with it, and so much of it's mediocre.
I mean, I would argue that, I would argue that there is an extent that you don't have those movies anymore as well, because they aren't quality. You are being bombarded with way too much crap, but that's the problem, is it's way too much crap. You can't make quality because Netflix and Amazon and HBO and all these streaming services are trying to make sure that they're padding their service. We have content. Why are you paying $20 a month for us? Because look at all this content.
Yeah.
But it's not content anybody wants to watch. And part of that is, just like he said, they're so oblivious that movies aren't the go-to for everyone anymore. You do have television shows, video games. There's still obviously books, music, theater. There's different things that people are experiencing. And you're not giving people a reason to go to the movies. Hollywood's so oblivious that they're the ones that have actually ruined the movie culture, but they don't see it. They keep forcing, whatever objectives into films rather than focusing on telling amazing stories or just building up content rather than making sure they have people like Amazon's Rings of Pooh. We'll give that example because you used the Lord of the Rings films. People love the movies. No one cares for Rings of Power. Why? Because you hired people who have never made a television show to make a show about some of the most prolific fantasy novels that people love, because you just wanted to have something on your service that said Lord of the Rings. And I mean, people don't want cheap garbage anymore.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting. I'm glad you did bring that up, because that's kind of what the Christian Toto article goes into, specifically about how you have these studios that were kind of set up in the early 2000s to put out these auteur, type films.
Yeah.
Especially when you have some of them being these documentaries that cover obscure subjects, albeit they're left-leaning. So, of course, they've got the elitist groups that, and Hollywood itself that funds it. But even those used to get a little bit of traction for somewhat being, semi-investigative and again, told creatively well, that it sparked your interest even for the average film goer, because you really thought, they're unveiling and pulling the veil behind this, social, something that should be a more social topic pushed to the forefront. But it's like they're closing up shop because they're finding nobody is attracted to it anymore. And a lot of what the movie industry and including your streamers are turning to are these franchises. They're turning to something like Lord of the Rings, and they're even finding those hard to attract viewers, simply because, one, it is mediocre crap. I think that's the top line reason. But it's like you're resting on the laurels of things that people have been beat over the head with.
And sometimes it's okay to move on. Like, Lord of the Rings are great as they are. We don't need any more content. There's no more story to tell.
But that's why it's kind of ultimately underpinning our main headline here of being Hollywood's days are numbered, because they don't know where to go. If you can't create something new because people aren't interested in seeing it, but then they're also so tired of seeing everything being, part of a franchise, whether it's Indiana Jones or The Matrix, or they're even now returning to Blair Witch Project.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, come on. You're talking about...
Is that Blumhouse is doing that?
Yeah. And they're wanting to
Stupid.
tap back into Blair Witch, and I'm like, you're literally talking about the film that launched...
Found footage.
Footage film, found footage genre, and just... talk about cheap, low-budget filmmaking that just garnered a huge...
But that was also a specific moment, like during the culture of the time.
You're trying to recapture something that you can't.
You can't recreate a moment and cultural event like that. I mean, you can make new cultural events like Endgame, but that wasn't trying to recreate. It was its own new type of... It wasn't them trying to recreate.
And that was after... them helming 20 plus films before it.
Yes.
And yet even then, like you said, it's like they're wanting to capture lightning in a bottle.
Yes.
And yet they're trying so hard to do that with either one, what's come before it, or two, to try to create or trying to create things that are so fringe, that are so specific. I mean, it's funny because, Sean, you brought up Angel Studios, and it's like, of all the studios that are out there creating things that are somewhat new or interesting, or at least They know who their audience is. They're not shying away from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're wanting to create vivid storytelling that has an artistic touch that literally the Christian industry, I would beg, or Christian,
Needs it, yeah.
Yeah.
Christians themselves yearn for and have yearned for years, and yet, they're unashamedly going after that.
Yeah.
They're unashamed of saying,
Well,
"Hey,
they're
this is
making
who we
good
are."
movies.
And exactly.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, content is king.
Yep.
And they're wanting to make sure they put forth something that people do want to consume. And I hate to say it, but when you're only making something that you yourself are sharing with your buddies in the Hollywood circle, well, no wonder it's dying fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's what I.
No, I was going to go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it's funny, even just being next door with your neighbors is an example. We sit around and talk about, like, hey, have you watched Fallout? And it's like, no, I haven't watched that. I'm watching Three Body Problem. No,
Yeah.
I'm not watching that one. I'm watching
Yes.
Resident
Yeah,
Alien,
there's so much out.
Brian and Kristen. But it's like, it's like nobody's watching the same thing because there's too freaking much.
Yes.
Remember the days when you would go to the movie theater and see Jurassic Park? And if you went to school the next day and said, I went to see Jurassic Park, everybody you knew was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to see that this weekend. I saw it last night. Now it just seems like I was telling a guy from church, I was like, I'm going to see the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. And he's just like,
What the hell is that?
What is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly what he said. And wait, didn't say what the hell, but he's like, what is that? And I'm trying to explain it to him. He's like, oh, it sounds like Inglourious Bastards.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's like what you said about lightning in a bottle. It's like trying to catch lightning in a bottle that's already full of lightning.
Right.
You're not doing anything new, but at the same time, you're filling us with so much stuff that nobody's on the same page. How are we supposed to be social with our film going and television experience
and
when we're not
Netflix.
all watching it?
Netflix is guilty of this too, because they'll do it with something like not Three Body Problem, which is their latest big hit that culturally and socially caught on, but the previous one that was the Korean show, the game show one.
Yeah. I like that one. Squid Games.
Squid
Yeah,
Games.
yeah.
Squid Games was the other one that it was like after it came out and everybody just started watching and talking about it, and it started this social trend, and then next thing you know, we're renewing it. We got a season 2 that's
and I would
on the
argue
way.
the only thing that made that famous was TikTok. I think social media, Instagram and TikTok, is what virally pushed that show. I'm not saying it's not a good show,
Right.
But I'm saying that show wouldn't have nowhere near the viewers than it did from
But I think
social media.
That's so much of what I feel like Netflix is able to tap into it, because they've put the resources behind being a platform that at least tries to think creatively different, and plus they need to keep up. If they're going to push up that price and have these different tiers and you're paying a premium, they want to give you something that you may or may not like. Because here's the thing, as much as I don't want to pay the Netflix price, they have a way more wide array of content that is Netflix content, more so than if I get on Max. I know it's the Warner Brothers library, and there may be some classics on there that I want to watch or revisit, but at the end of the day, it's like they're still only going to put out so much for HBO.
Yeah,
And
but even HBO had Game of Thrones that
Yeah, no,
everybody
true.
watched every week, and
True.
it was one of those shows that you could say, "Did you watch Game of Thrones this week?"
You're
And
right.
Everybody said yes.
Yep. And you're right. Like every once in a while, it's funny because I think there are those shows that come along.
Yeah.
But what these studios are trying to capture is that upon every single release,
They're trying to make every release that, and you can't, for one, especially when
No.
you're just churning out that much.
well, and especially we've seen. I mean, we were just talking about Marvel. I mean, the fact that they only have one movie coming out, even when it was slipping downhill after Shang-Chi or after the Eternals, it's like I would have never imagined back then that we were going to get another year without at least 3 Marvel movies.
Yeah. And they had gotten up to 4. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
and that's crazy to think that's 4 movies in 1 year, especially when none of them mattered in the grand scheme of
Yes,
things.
And this year we're getting Deadpool, which is essentially an anti-Marvel movie.
Yeah.
And it's like,
But that might be a good thing.
that might be a good
Yeah.
thing.
It may be what it needs right now.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, it's still a franchise movie, which is fine because that's one that I feel like is still like people still are interested in. But even Netflix, just talking about how like Seinfeld said, like the industry's clueless. Like Netflix in this article says that they announced that they're going to focus more on populist films rather than the auteur-driven films. So all the Academy Award nominated Netflix movies that they kept trying to go for, like Roma, they're like, well, nobody's actually like subscribing for those movies. So now we're just going to keep making the cheap
And
action
they do.
movies that, I mean, they do. People watch them, but
Yep.
they're
Yeah.
not great movies.
Extraction,
yeah.
and 1, 2, and 3.
We
and
just talked about the freaking hit that Adam Sandler's been
Yeah.
in terms of
Yeah.
just every
That's
movie
all
he
they
comes
want.
out
They
with.
pretty much have openly have admitted that it's like, look, we're not going for good. We're just going for whatever makes people watch.
Which, and here's the thing: at the end of the day, I mean, I can't say that that's wrong
Not from a business point.
from a business standpoint, but yeah, it's the commodity of what I mean. This is where I go back to Jerry Seinfeld's point, and I think he's right. Is that you're not in the same ballpark anymore. You're in a completely
Yeah.
different sport with the movie and the film and TV industry. It's like you're literally playing to try to capture any bit of attention that a person has left when they're. I mean, the amount of times now, and I do physically make myself stop. That I have been watching a movie at home, and I'll pick up my phone and start scrolling while I feel like there's just a lull in the movie or there's something I don't have to pay attention to. And it's a terrible habit because of just always having to have that stimuli stimulated. And it's crazy because I don't know if it's necessarily a problem that Hollywood can fix because they have. You know, they're kind of at odds with it. I mean, they're trying to compete in such a way that they stay relevant in an ever-changing, not only industry, but just changing landscape when it comes to capturing people's attention. But it's like, how do you compete in such a way that you are offering up something that is worthwhile? And I do think this is one of those cases of less is more. But how do you retract it to such a degree without it being detrimental to not only the industry, but to movies and TV in general?
Yeah.
I mean, now with people and more streaming platforms, I mean, again, we've all joked about how the streaming wars have brought about cable subscriptions in a different form. That's all they are. How much there's way too much content, as we were just talking about, and Sean's bringing up all the different series that people are watching, and nobody's catching up with the same thing because they're all just watching something that suits their taste. And again, while there is some, there's something good about that, about if you find something niche and you're like, man, this is really great, but then it kind of does suck that you can't talk to somebody about it because nobody's experiencing it.
Yeah.
And oddly, it's like, I just, funny enough, we've talked about gaming on this show before, and there have been times where, like, I was happy this year when I found out that, like, literally FF7 Rebirth, which is a remake, it's a franchise game, but it was like the last PlayStation exclusive to come out for the rest of this year. And I'm like, thank God, I don't need any more exclusives or any more games that are going to, because there's just so much across every single multimedia
Would you even
landscape.
think that there's too many movies in theaters? I mean, when you think about it, AMC's got 19 movies playing right now in theaters,
Which is crazy.
and it's like that's this time of the year, and I'm like, again, going back to what I said, when Independence Day came out, everybody saw it. Jurassic Park, everybody saw it. There was like maybe 7 movies playing in a movie theater at that time. Now there's 20
movie in multiple screening rooms. Like there was, it's like they might have like in 2 or 3, but they got so many movies that there's like, the big movie of the week might be in 2 or 3, and then there's one in every other theater. When before you would have like 3 or 4 theaters each showing a different movie.
Yeah, I just feel like with content, like with that much content, there's no way. Everybody, people on average, probably they're not like us where they subscribe and go see up to 3 or 4 movies a month. Most people, if they go at all, are going to see 1 movie a month.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you've got 20 movies, there's no way that an average group of people are going to have seen the same movie. They're not all going to pick the same thing.
Right.
And it's like, it's not like the days that we remember where...
I hate to say it, but there used to be, like you were saying, those tentpole films that you could count on that were going to be... I mean, that's what Marvel became up to Endgame. It was like, this is
full.
A cultural event to go see it at a midnight release. I mean, I think that's what made Barbenheimer such a success. It was... This is the cinema event of 2023.
Yeah.
And you can go see these 2 polar opposite type films. One's highly intellectual, the other one's bubbly and fun. And yet you can go see both of them at the same time for this experience. And of course, theaters loved it. But again, that's a secret sauce that you can't replicate. It's a cultural movement that it was spontaneously created because of kind of how ridiculous and cynical it is. But you can't just try to make that happen. And then every once in a while, you'll get a Top Gun Maverick that it's a sequel but it came so long after the original. And again, it had so much heart and soul and pertained so much to what the original was. And if in some ways a lot better, in most ways actually a lot better than the original. But it had that secret sauce in it that kept people wanting to go back and experience it in the theater. You've had a lot of other great movies that I think we would argue were great. That it came out and they kind of were duds or they flopped. I mean, Mission Impossible was a stellar hit steadily throughout the years. Last year, Dead Reckoning comes out and it just kind of came and went.
Yeah,
everybody kind of just moved on and forgot about it. Indiana Jones 5 came, went, and it was crap. I mean,
and that was one that we went to thinking the theater would be somewhat full, halfway full at least, and it wasn't.
Nope.
It was like 20 people in there.
And that's where I think the struggle is I really do think I'm with you. It's like less is more, but I also think, there's not a premium experience of going to the theater. I mean, you kind of see the overworked and underpaid people that push some of these movies out. I mean, Kong Godzilla was, I mean, CGI fest all over the place, but it wasn't necessarily a good CGI, and the action and the set pieces weren't mind-blowing, or it just didn't seem like... I mean, and I know I'm talking out of my own butt here because apparently it's gotten enough butts in seats that it's been successful, and it continues to rank high.
That and Transformers, those are two franchises that I guess people they don't care what the quality is. They just want to see giant things beating on each other.
And truth be told, and fair enough, and there's times where I feel that way. I just want a little bit of substance.
That's why I used to love Fast and the Furious, but then they went like 3 or 4 movies too long. So
and I won't. I'll maybe make this my last point. I won't say, or I'll admit that I'm somewhat jaded in this regard because of doing a movie podcast.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of movies.
We see a lot, and sometimes there are times where back in the day where you could pick and choose. But I do feel like, I hate to say it, even going back to high school, there were times where I did look forward to the end of the year knowing there were Oscar films that were coming out almost every other week, and that they were actually good movies you could count on. And to be honest, it's like anymore, I just feel like there's such it's rare to find a movie that comes out that you think is going to be a certain way. It not only surprises you, but it surprises you in oh wow, that was actually really good.
Yeah.
The last movie that comes to my mind in that regard was Barbarian.
Yeah.
It was a movie I totally wrote off, thought it was going to be goofy and ridiculous. Saw it, was really surprised, and ultimately walked out thinking, wow, that was fantastic.
And those, I love those moments, and I feel like you're right. We don't get those as often anymore. I mean, I don't expect every movie to like be something that I walk out of and be like, oh wow, that was like much better than I thought. But I mean, anymore, like you said, you get like one a year, like Barbarian. Whereas I feel like in the past, like there's a few times, like I remember when we went and saw Slumdog Millionaire just because it was nominated, and I wasn't really expecting anything from that movie, but I walked out of the theater thinking, dang, that was awesome. No wonder it's nominated for Academy Award. It deserves it, and it did win. And I just feel like especially with the Best Picture nominees anymore. I mean, just this last year, like there's not a single one of those movies, even the ones I liked, that I feel like compared
to be on that list. Yeah.
Agreed. And it's funny because I think theaters, knowing the struggle that they've been in, especially AMC, are in the same boat as the streaming services, that they're trying to capture your attention in such a way of just throwing out what they can, hoping something is going to stick. And I'm like, I don't think that's the right game to play. I think if Hollywood really wants to regain the same kind of cultural status that it used to, one, I don't think it ever will, because there's these other different, screens that are in front of us all the time that are competing for our attention.
Yeah.
But you've got to make it then something that is going to capture and make it feel special and worthwhile. Mm-hmm. And granted, you may say, well, but what if we don't make that many movies? And I'm like, look, I'm not saying I'm going to pay a $40, $50 price tag to go see a movie at a theater. But if I know that it is a special circumstance to go to the theater to see something, that the care and devotion from the cast and crew were spent and painstakingly made sure that this was going to appeal to not just one specific type of people, or we need to meet this threshold of return so that it's a good movie. I mean, again, I never would have thought as a child or even a teenager that Star Wars I'd be tired of it.
Yeah.
Or that I would be tired of.
That's a good thought.
Yeah. And I'm just like, there's times where I'm just like, I don't even want to see anything Star Wars anymore, except for what I grew up with.
Yeah.
It's like I remember begging for more
Yes.
Star Wars.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like they need to return to smaller, more quaint, personal experiences. I mean, I really do hate to say it, but it's that Chick-fil-A treatment when it comes to service. Even like I think of when we went and saw, the old movies, like Hitchcock films. At the Palace.
Yeah. That's great.
I mean, when you go to the Louisville Palace, that's not going to a normal theater. And in fact, it's a makeshift. Like they put up a screen and a projector for that purpose. It's an actual, playhouse.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, when you go into an atmosphere like that, it makes an event feel special.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't mind going and paying $20 for a spectacle. I mean, it's not just the IMAX treatment; it's the whole atmosphere that's got to change. I think to make it feel like you're really worth an outing again.
Yeah.
I think that's the only way you can differentiate. I think if you're trying too much to fit in with the current age, it's like, well, everybody's attention span in those circles is like 15 seconds.
Yeah.
You want somebody to come and sit down for 2 to 3 hours, enjoy themselves. And they added these perks of you can get beer or you can get something ordered to your seat. And I'm like, but it's freaking fast food restaurant style that's delivered. And even then, it's like, even the recliners that I love at Cinemark are great. But, and I will say that's one perk that I would say they have an edge over AMC. But their whole point is to make you feel comfortable. But then you could easily liken that to, well, why don't I just sit at home?
Sit at home.
My
I don't want to
recliner?
feel like I'm at home.
Right.
I want to feel like I'm at the show.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about getting on your phone and scrolling while you're at home. Nobody does that in the theater.
No.
I mean, very unusual to see somebody, teenagers, but if you're there to see the movie, it's like even a bad movie, even Godzilla versus Kong or whatever that was, Godzilla Kong, whatever.
That is the
it's
event.
Like, again, I don't get my phone out in the movie theater.
Right.
Because I'm at the show. Like I'm at it. It's that if I'm at home, I'm more likely to do that.
Yeah. Right.
And I feel like, if you're getting that experience like you're talking about, like we used to get, I mean, hell, even people helping you find your seat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's gone to the wayside.
Yep.
It's like it doesn't matter that your seat was reserved. It's like when you walked down the aisle, someone was always at the end saying, "Do you need help finding your seat?"
Yep.
And I'm like, that's service, and that's part of the experience, not just the popcorn, not just the screen and the seats.
Hell,
just the
not having to
service.
pick your. Well, I guess they finally did start giving you popcorn in a bag again.
Yeah.
But they used to. It was like, here's your bag, and then you go over to the popcorn station, and then
they'd
it's like
fill it up. Yeah,
it's like
they only do that because
Yeah.
they don't have as many
Staff.
people going anymore.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, even
That
people
too, yeah.
Yeah.
both. And it's just funny because it's like, why don't you? I would love like the theater in Boston, like that AMC was a nice theater.
Yeah.
It's like, why don't you make it up to look like a prestigious theater that like you're going out to a show, like you're doing something nice. It's like we know it's a projector and a movie screen and it's not like a stage play, but that doesn't matter. Like you still like used to like the cinema was still made up to be like an event that you go to. It wasn't just like you were just going over to a buddy's house to watch movies.
The more they make it self-service, the more it's no different than you just being at home.
That's right.
I mean, it really is. It's like, so what? I can watch it on a bigger screen. I can put my VR headset on and watch it on a 400-meter screen if I want to.
Yeah.
And it's no different than going to the movie theater.
To me, that's where the lost... And look, I'm not saying these are bulletproof ways in which they can make a comeback. I mean, again, a lot of this is on the theater chains more so than the industry. As far as the industry is concerned...
They just need to make better movies.
True. No, 100%.
Worthy of being in the theater.
And easier said than done. But the truth and the fact of the matter is that, look, I'm all for watching a movie that... sometimes I want to actually go and see something that does represent real life and I can correlate with, and it's like, it gets you in the feels. But let's be honest, the main reason you go to the theater is to escape.
Yeah.
And far too often have I felt like I've gone to the theater in recent years. I mean, this is the woke disease. the reason we complain about it so much, or we critique movies nowadays when they check these boxes, is because it's so obvious that they're pushing a message, whatever the message is. They're shoehorning it into whatever the movie is, that you don't have a piece of entertainment anymore. It's lost its focus of what it's supposed to do, which is to pull me out of this world, pull me out of the everyday troubles and trials that I've got going on, and let me escape to somewhere that I've not been before.
Yep.
Let me live life vicariously through these characters that are on screen. I mean, this was the Marvel Phase 1, 2, and 3 magic. It was living in these superheroes, coming off the page and living on the screen in a new, kind of kid-like way for kids turning into teenagers, turning into adults that you didn't expect. And it was this secret sauce that was like, oh, wow, this is what they've
phenomenon,
cracked.
yeah.
And sadly, it's just like, it's all turned in. Look, we all know it's backed up by numbers and business, and you've got to make a profit. We get that. But your profit motive has dwindled so much that it's like you've lost your way. You've forgotten what it is to be. I mean, how many times have we talked about it when it comes to the Oscars, and they show like one time a montage of movie history.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like this glimpse of, here's what movies are like. And then, boom, we're back into, here's Jimmy
what it's like
Kimmel
now.
telling a bad joke or a political jab.
Yeah.
It's all it is.
Remember when we used to be good?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like you think that's
Pepperidge Farms
the
remembers.
memoriam
Yeah.
section should be the highlight of
Yes.
all the old great movies.
Or all the old
death
great
of
Oscar
Hollywood.
shows. Yeah.
The death of Hollywood.
So, look, at the end of the day, I kind of err on the side of Jerry Seinfeld in terms of, look, classic Hollywood, humdrum. It's not even classic Hollywood because I don't think they are who they are.
No.
I don't think they are who they used to be. It's changed so much, and they've even become jaded and cynical about what it is they produce.
And they don't even realize, like, they keep doing it. Like, it's so obvious that they don't understand that they're the reasons they're failing.
They have become the teenager who first gets an iPhone and starts a TikTok wanting to get fame and stardom.
Mm-hmm.
They're chasing after that rather than actually saying, wow, this is an interesting piece of technology. How do I use it to the best ability to better my life? And it's like Hollywood used to use the motion picture as a way to connect with other human beings in a way that, I mean, this is why I fell in love with filmmaking. It evoked emotion.
It connected with you.
It connected with me, and I could connect with others upon doing the same thing with my artistry. And it was like, if you can pull at somebody's heartstrings and carry them in such a way to evoke an emotion out of them that you were hoping they would experience, there's nothing more powerful. And the same way with getting on a FaceTime call with your family members if they're states away. It's a powerful use of technology, but you can't depend solely on that. And if it just becomes a facade of what it really used to represent, then it has nothing else left to do but die. So it can hopefully be reborn in something way better. That being said, let's move on to our final topic of the night. Let's get into that relationship segment.
Let me tell you about the birds and the bees and the flowers and the trees and the moon up above and a thing called love.
I didn't yell at this. Man. Always start off that.
Well, they call the sex talk the birds and the bees. There's a lot of other animals that have sex, Why they just focus on the birds and the bees?
I think it's just a nice image.
Birds and bees.
I don't want to visualize birds
what type of
having
mental-
sex. That's weird.
I don't know
And
how
why
do
are
they
bees
do it?
why I
involved?
even said that.
It's like I get maybe
How do
like
they get past the feathers in the back? Like, the tail feathers would get in the way.
I always thought it was too, like birds and bees, like they don't mate together.
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, bees have stingers, so maybe that's the. But I mean, it's like they don't sting birds, and then the birds lay eggs. Like that's a terrible
Actually,
analogy.
I think
The
the way
Bees are like they're slaves to the queen.
yes,
Yeah.
and the way
It's not a good example.
the queen
Yeah, we
picks
should be
her
slaves
mate,
to the queen.
and then once she realizes
She
like
eats their head,
he
doesn't
has
it?
sex with her,
Yeah.
and he goes and dies,
Yeah.
the moment he like gives it up, so she
Yeah.
can reproduce, and then that's all he's
Yeah.
there for.
Yeah,
He dies almost. I mean, it's
Not a good example.
I don't know. Maybe it is when you think about it.
you say when you get
I mean,
when you get
it's
married, you die.
like penguins mate for life. So why isn't it the penguins
Oh,
and the
that's a good one.
chimpanzees?
I've heard
or
what,
something like
what's
that.
the and I
Well,
don't know if-
chimpanzees kill their own young, so that might not be the best
That's
example
true.
either.
Well, that's like humans.
Well, hey, we evolved from
are we
monkeys.
any better?
Maybe we did evolve
It's
from
like we
apes, I
evolved
don't
from
know.
monkeys. See, it's normal.
Yeah.
I mean,
We don't
I
use a
think-
rock now. We use a shot needle.
it's a rumor too, but I don't know that dolphins are the only other is it amphibian that likes to
They're mammals.
or mammals.
Yeah.
They're the only other mammal that enjoys sex.
Yeah, they actually
enjoy-
rape. Like they're one of the only other animals that'll
Oh, wow.
like.
Did you say they rape?
Yeah, apparently like
This
they-
is nothing
yeah.
to do
Rape?
Yeah.
with our relationship segment at all. But
Well, to be fair,
That's
they're animals.
awesome.
They wouldn't have a concept of that. But like
Maybe they
there's
do.
rare occurrences of
Maybe
like,
they
like
have
them
a
trying to
concept of it,
forcibly
but they
like when
don't
people
care.
swim with dolphins, like they can get like overexcited and try to force themselves on like.
Oh, I've seen
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I just thought that was a trick.
I thought it was always just the dolphin
The humping,
just trying
the
to hug
humping
them.
dolphin.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and, like
Yeah.
they actually will try to forcibly be like, "Hey, we want this."
Oh
you
my
know?
gosh, that'd be
Wow.
like that video
Yeah.
you
Dude,
showed of-
dolphins are like Vikings, dude.
Yeah.
They're badass
Yeah.
now. I thought dolphins were like pussies.
No,
But
they're
dolphins
smart.
they rape and pillage and everything. That's great.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
claim their
Dolphins
territory.
can kill sharks, dude.
Well, and then they
Yeah.
can rape them. I guess
They're just like
this just took a dark
I
turn.
know.
I was not
I
expecting.
know. Gosh, I just don't. I never get it. The birds and the bees. I don't know.
I don't either. I don't know if it's just a nice way to put it, and they were just trying to,
I
birds
guess.
and bees flying around, and they
It's like
just,
if you're gonna tell it, like we're gonna talk about parenting. It's like as a parent when you're having the sex, just talk about penises and vaginas,
Yeah.
not birds and bees.
There it is.
Just tell it like it is.
kindergarten cop.
It's better they hear it from you than from school.
Yeah.
So
Well, actually, this is our topic. How did your parents parent? So, did your parents give you the sex talk?
oh yeah. After I learned from the kid down the
That's
street.
what I was saying. My dad tried one time,
yeah,
and it wasn't awkward. It was just like a, Dad, I already know.
yeah.
It was kind of a. It's
Yeah.
been too late. I already know.
Yeah.
What about yours, Keith?
It was pretty much the same thing. Like he tried, and it just like it's like, yeah, I'm aware, and it's like, okay, well, like you like to wait until you're married, and this, and I mean, just the kind of like just making sure you're not gonna make some babies that we don't need right now,
Right.
Pretty much. It's like we're good.
How
We're
late
good.
did he tell you? Trying to tell you? My gosh, if you're at that point, well,
No, just I mean in general. Like
Okay.
I mean, did your dad just like go at it? Don't wait until you get married.
no,
Like,
he did. He did. Obviously that.
Obviously, they want you to start before you start getting into
Yeah.
relationships and
True.
are doing. Yeah,
I got to have that talk with my sons
Yeah.
before they knew about it.
okay.
I don't know how.
Was that your
Because they're one of them's in
approach?
5th grade, but yeah, like
Honestly, I don't think that's too young. I knew.
no. I'm saying my kids didn't know
That's what
about
he's
it yet.
saying.
I
Oh,
was
wow.
surprised.
He
that-
was surprised
especially
that-
Sawyer. I was really surprised that he hadn't heard about it.
Yeah, what grade's
He had-
Andrew
so
in?
He's in 2nd grade.
So like that one I could see, but yeah, fifth.
Sawyer
I
had heard he had heard the word sex, and he had heard like the word hump and boner and all this kind of stuff, but he didn't connect the dots. So
Yeah.
like he didn't know what it really. So when I brought it up, he was like, "Oh yeah, I heard about that at school. What is that?"
Okay.
So that I still had to explain it to him. So I feel like I was lucky in that regard because I was able to get the first talk
Yeah.
with him
Like,
about
hey,
it.
this
And
is what it's referencing,
went
but we don't
into-
call it that.
Yeah.
That's a-
I mean, I got to go into biblical. Here's what it means. Here's how it's supposed to be done. And here's why.
Right.
I mean, we went through all of that stuff, and
Here's
it
how you
was
keep your pimp hand strong. Your
pimp hand.
keep your pimp hand strong. You
But
gotta
it's
teach him
like
that young.
he's at that age now where he's waking up with morning woods and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, and it's like,
Yeah.
and
It
so
happens.
when we started talking about it, all that stuff came out, and
Right.
it was like, oh, so is that why this happens? And it won't
it's-
go
it's
away. And all,
better
you know,
that
it's
you
like
get to
we got to have that
control the
yes,
narrative.
Yes, because I even asked him. I said, so have you not heard any of this at school? And he's like, well, I knew like there's kids that talk about humping, and they'll like walk up behind each other and like act like they're humping. And he's like, but I didn't
all
know.
of us guys
yeah,
know
we
exactly,
know exactly. I'm
'cause
like, because I'm laughing when he said
laughing.
it.
I'm like,
He's
it's
like,
like, I
yeah,
remember
there's
my,
he's
Some
like,
things don't change.
This kid at school, like he humps people's legs, and it's like, well, so I'm like, yeah, that's he's making fun of this act of
Right.
the act of sex, and that's what he's doing. So it's like he's not doing it the right way, and this is not. It shouldn't be something we make fun of. It's something.
and that's also the appropriate time where you're just like, he's learning something
Yeah.
at home.
Yeah.
He doesn't need
Yeah.
to know.
Right.
But his parents aren't telling him.
Aren't
so
telling
we're,
him the way
we're
we
gonna,
are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I was
Communicating
like, you can
it that way.
you can ask me anything you want to ask, and
Right.
boy, it all came out. Like,
was
and
curious.
it was and it was a lot of curiosities, but the explanation or any kind of definition hadn't been given to him yet.
Right.
So I got to mold that, luckily. And then for Andrew, like, we have these books that are written by some Christian author, but it's like, here's how to explain sex for this age group. Here's how to explain it for this when they get to this age. Here's a little bit more biological and detailed. And the first one is the birds and the bees. The first one's just, this is what mommy and daddy do to make a baby. This is what God says about it in Genesis. And then it kind of,
That's not bad.
Yeah, when you get up into like the 14-year-old book, that's when it goes into the more
Detailed,
more detailed.
biological.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool. We did that with him, but yeah, when I was a kid, like, that was some kid down the street took my life-size Batman doll and put a hole in it and screwed it in front of me, and then I went home and asked my dad, like,
What was he doing to
What
that
was he doing
Batman?
to my Batman doll? And my dad had to explain it to me, and then of course they called that kid's parents and said,
that's a little
why
disturbing.
is your son having sex with my Batman doll?
Right.
But yeah, it was some stupid teenager who was like, "Oh, you ever heard of sex? Let me show you."
Oh my
and did
gosh.
that, yeah. So it was like, and me and my two friends just sat there like
What is going? You're
just
just violating
watching,
my
like, what are you
Batman.
doing on our chase lounge in my garage? Like, come on, man. It was like stupid.
Mine
But yeah,
was just
like,
watching the Squiggly channel on,
Yeah.
Cinemax.
Scrambled, the
Yeah,
When they had the
And every
cable
once in a while
boxes
you-
and you're sitting there
Yeah.
trying to get it.
to find it.
Yeah.
Me and my brother are sitting there trying to see if we can catch a nipple or something
Yeah.
fly across the screen.
Yeah,
It
then,
was
but
it.
eventually you got bored and played Nintendo.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It was like
Yeah.
you didn't. Yeah, it was like waiting for an image to load on my Packard Bell computer
Yeah.
with the 56K modem. It was like 20 minutes, and I'm just at her face.
Yeah.
and I'm like, but
I'm
at this
done.
point, I'm gonna go play PlayStation.
I want to go play Rugrats. That's
I'll go
what's
watch
sad.
Rugrats.
I mean,
But
no, and it's funny because even this, I mean, it's fine that it went this direction, but this conversation was more about like
yeah, I get
just
it. Yeah.
in general parenting, like how'd your parents parent? Because mine were a little bit more obviously more strict. I mean, you know this first and foremost with my curfew, but I would even say I mean, I had a lot more rope than I think my brother and sister did because they're older. Both Amber
happens,
and
yeah.
Amber and Chip were. Amber being the oldest, Chip being the middle child, and then of course me being the youngest. They were like, "Oh, you got away with so much more than we did," and I honestly didn't feel like I got away with that much.
Yeah.
But I also it's that difference of reflecting and looking back and kind of saying like being grateful for it now that I'm an adult, understanding why those guardrails were there, and of course you obviously as a kid and teenager especially you're gonna fight authority because it's like you think you know best. And only when you get older and you start to experience life and you realize, like, oh, there were practical reasons as to why my mom and dad taught me these lessons and told me to stay in line in this way. And then there's other things that, and I think like it is with all generations, there's some things that ebb and flow and you inherit, and then there's others you'll kind of give up depending on what you want to pass along to your own children. But for the most part, it's like I think if your parents did a good job, then they, you almost adopt the same parenting style they did because, you realize it had a good effect on you.
And you take the things that maybe you think they didn't do so well on,
True.
and you make them better
Yeah.
in your own way. It's like, I mean, I can absolutely say, I feel like when you have more than one kid, the first kid you're learning, the second kid you've gotten better. By the time you're at 3 or 4, you're kind of like, I know what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
This worked with him. This worked with her. We can ease up a little bit on him.
Right.
And it's kind of like, I've learned that too, but I've also learned that one of the things my parents, I don't feel like they did, and my parents are great parents, but my parents would tell me, especially as a teenager, this is for your own good, or the reason we have these, you don't understand now, but you'll understand one day when you're adult.
Yeah.
Why?
Right.
They never told me why.
Right.
One of the things that I am making it a point to do with my kids is when I say, like, I know this doesn't make sense to you, but here's why I'm doing it. And I explain it. I'm like, you don't understand this because you're not a grown-up. This is why.
Yep.
One day you will understand it because of X,
And
Y,
they may
Z.
not even fully understand the explanation.
They don't.
But it doesn't matter.
No.
Because then
Yeah.
they at least have a reason for why you're doing it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like, and there were some things that, whether my parents were articulate enough within that regard, there were times where definitely they explained it point blank why, and then there were other times where they're like, because I said so, and that's it, and that's all you need to know.
Yeah, this is
And-
I'm the parent. You're supposed to do
Yes.
what I say.
Right.
So
And then there were times
Yeah.
too where it was like they understood that fine line was not enough, and they would have to explain further.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it was also like, we're going to let you sink or swim. You got to figure it out for yourself, and if you got to learn the hard way, again, sometimes you got to let them touch the hot stove because they'll never do it again, and they have to because they're so curious to figure out why. And I think it's a balancing act, and like you said, I think I can't even imagine this because I'm not a parent yet, but I can only imagine the amount of times that my parents probably went to bed, and even after they've woken up and we're all raised adults and we're on our own and we're all doing our own thing, how many times I wonder how many times they either sat up at night worried about us and how we were going to turn out, or worried about something that was going on with us that we didn't think was such a big deal, but they were worried like, oh my gosh, I hope they do the right thing, or they choose this, or this works out for them. Like, so many of those things that probably didn't register to me at the time, because of course you're a selfish teenager, you're a selfish kid, you're just thinking about yourself, and they're of course worried about making sure that they do raise you right. And so I think good parents do.
Yeah. And my wife and I have sat up. I don't know if we've sat up, but I know personally, like, we both worry constantly about the education that they're getting in public schools right now. And that's why we're making the change and changing our finances around so that we can put them into a different school.
Understandably.
Because we worry about the narrative and agenda that they're being taught. They're not being educated, they're being indoctrinated.
That's right.
And we're seeing it. We're starting to see it in some of the things that they say and the things that they don't know.
Yep.
Which just amazes me that a kid can be in 5th grade and not know what the Declaration of Independence is, or about the Holocaust, or even really how to say the Pledge of Allegiance all the way through.
Right.
It's just astounding. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
And it's funny because it's like, and I'll be one to say, some people may find this controversial. I don't think it is. Kids should be indoctrinated. The question is what are they
With what?
indoctrinated with?
Yeah.
And that, to me, is agreed. That's where the parents come in. It's like their job is to do the indoctrination.
Yeah.
Their job is to set the standards of how they're going to be raised and what they're going to be raised with. That's not the education system. Like reading, arithmetic, and that.
Well, actually, actual
writing,
like
that's it.
education, not
Classical education, as it's called. Yeah. But Keith, what about you? You haven't talked much about your parents' parenting.
I don't. I mean, it's very similar. I would say there's not. I think a lot I can add within.
And it's kind of funny because I mean, we all probably would not be real good friends if we had vastly different parents.
I mean,
that
mine weren't
parented
as
us
strict
different.
as yours as far as like curfew and things like that. But I mean, as far as
Watching rated R movies.
as
Yeah,
far
my
as
parents let me watch whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And
Well,
I don't feel
mean-
like it. Well, I'm pretty messed up.
Yeah. I think
I
the
don't blame
difference
them.
there is also the lessons that you're given too, as far as it's like. It's not like they just like from like birth was just like, well, here's like Saw, go ahead, watch it. You're only 5 years old. Like obviously that wasn't a thing, but it is, I think, one of those that because I was taken to church on a regular basis and I was impressed upon certain morals and values and just how like life is, reality of life and the harshness of life too. It's one of the things where I could discern fact from fiction. So it's not like, kids today can't, I think. I mean, not all kids. I mean, depending on how you're raised, but there's plenty that, I think could watch something and that's how you, like Hollywood and colleges do indoctrinate because they teach them the impressionable minds. Well, yeah, this is exactly how life is supposed to go. And of course, my parents were the ones to be like, just like you and Amelia or anybody, that they look at what's being taught like, well, no, this is what it is, rather than just saying, yeah, no, we're not going to parent you. The education system will teach you everything you need to know. Just,
And of course, I think that it's
don't
backed
trust
up
them.
with love. I mean, you have to cultivate that atmosphere of we know what's best and we're doing what is best for you. Because if you're not backing it up with that, then you do have, because I think that's where you can get the problem of stricter parents or stern parents, that when it seems like it's just being stern for stern's sake, then they're not going to reciprocate, or they're not going to, it's not going to be valuable. I mean, there's a lot of, I think, parents out there who discipline in a very, level-headed manner, but if it's not backed up by any virtue of something like the Bible or a moral code in that regard, then it kind of is like, okay, well, you only really are taught that up until you're 18, and it's like, well, now you're an adult, make your own choices, and then, hey, you're at the world's, that's where you can become easily, you are impressionable, and you can easily be swayed by something like movies or music or what's in the culture. I mean, there were definitely, to me, it was always kind of that fine line of, my parents don't want me to listen or watch this. I know that, but I'm going to sneak it and watch it. And it's not that I think my parents were ignorant enough to know that there weren't things that slipped through the cracks, but you better believe if they ever found it or caught me listening or watching something, they would throw down the book. They'd lay me down and be like, this is not in our house and we're not having it. And I knew where they stood. Mm-hmm. And to me, even that amount of, overwatching was, I think that was good for my behavior, because it kept me honest and it kept me, okay, I know what's good, I know what's bad. Yeah. And it set that tone and that fine line in the sand. And of course, now I understand why some of that stuff that I probably saw at an early age and I shouldn't have, I'm like, all right, that was too much for me to handle. I shouldn't have.
Yeah. I think we can all look back and, well, I don't know if I speak for everybody, but myself, I look back and I wish my parents would have been a little bit more strict on certain things. There's a lot of mistakes that I made of my own free will, but I don't feel like I would have made those mistakes if there would have been a little bit more of a leash.
Pushback.
Yeah. And or if it would at least been explained to me, here's the consequences of a decision like that. Yes. I think I would have put it. But I also feel like too, parents can't be telling their kids not to do something and then they themselves do it.
True.
That's one thing that I can say about my father, for instance, is like, my dad, taught me not to cuss. I just like Paul, I know I shouldn't do it, but I do it anyway. But I heard my dad say 2 cuss words. He's 72 years old.
Yeah.
And in my lifetime at 40, I've heard him say 2 cuss words.
Yeah.
He didn't tell me not to use that kind of language and then me hear him in the other room using it with my mom or using it with friends. He lived it out.
Right.
And I think it's very important. A good parent will instill the rules and virtues and those morals in their kids, but then they'll also live that out outside of the I'm pointing my finger at you.
They practice what they preach.
That's right.
And kids are meticulous. They can they find out. They know, and they exactly. And you're right. It's like, and I think that to me is where the real adulting steps in. It's like when you become a parent and you realize not only the weight of that responsibility, but you also realize, okay, it's time for you really have to grow up. And I think the difference between good parents and bad parents are those who realize, okay, it's not about me anymore. It's about my children, and it's about what kind of humans they're going to be when they grow up. And when they make that sacrifice, and it is a sacrifice because you're sacrificing your own personal wants and needs and pleasures for the greater good of the life you just created. Yeah. And that's a beautiful sacrifice when it's made. And I think it's probably, and I hope to experience it one day myself, because I think it's the most fulfilling sacrifice that a human can give, that, parents can do, or that any human can experience as a parent. And I think the parents we see today that let their kids, I'm not even going to jump into any kind of political topics, but you can tell that their real first concern is their own motivation and their own selfishness, desires. And
having children should be a selfless thing. It should be the most selfless act you do in life, would be raising kids.
100%.
Yeah.
Alrighty, guys, that's going to do it on our discussion for tonight. Went over again, sorry. Couldn't help it. It was a good
I think
good
the
discussion.
birds and the bees took us out. That took us down a path.
Yeah.
It did.
I'm sorry about that.
No.
It's just
I-
I've always
look,
had that.
Once we brought up the dolphins, I think that was
Yeah.
my fault.
I'm gonna go
Yeah.
home and Google dolphin rape.
Yeah.
I really am.
So
I'm gonna see
interesting.
where Google takes me on
It
that
does,
one.
no, it's. I googled it while like
Oh
when we
my
were talking about it.
gosh! All right, great. On my Wi-Fi.
my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get some suggestions that I didn't even know I wanted.
It was talking about like they not just rape, like they're violent predators that'll actually they'll kill their own babies and then
Wow.
I
Oh my
mean, yeah.
gosh. So
Wow.
dolphins are extremely
yeah.
liberal.
They're evil.
They're,
Dolphins
wow.
are evil. Wow, didn't realize they.
So you're gonna have like
There's
SeaWorld
that-
advertisements on your Facebook
I
feed
am.
later.
There was that freaking it was a Boy Meets World episode, and they had the girl from Step by Step in it who was all protecting the environment, and there was like some stupid instance with a dolphin, and he says something to her, and she's like, apologize. He's got feelings too. I'm like, no, he doesn't. Freaking evil. He rapes other dolphins and he kills his own
their
children.
babies. Yeah.
Dolphins are evil.
Yeah.
They're terrible animals.
Well, now I'm reading about like group rape and
Okay,
Oh my
all
god,
right,
that
all right.
gangbang? Oh my gosh. All right. I can't believe this.
and I don't know
Hopefully
that,
you didn't have to explain that to Sawyer.
and I don't
A
know
gangbang?
No,
the
he hasn't heard that at school yet.
I can't verify that this is a real statistic because it was posted on X by Ron White, but it's funny. It's funny. It says
Ron White.
Yeah, it says more humans get raped by dolphins than bitten by sharks, but for some reason I'm okay with that. So that's
I
Ron
see
White.
him saying that with
can't
his
be
glass
real.
of
100
bourbon
that
and his
is-
cigar.
That is 100%
Like, you know,
Ron White. So
people get raped by
dolphins than bitten by
Call
sharks.
me tater salad.
yes, I see that. I believe he posted that. Now I don't
Oh,
know that
Lord.
that statistic's real, but he's
Maybe-
okay with it.
He's dead, ain't he?
no.
Do some
Ron
investigation.
White's
He's
not dead?
No, he ain't dead yet.
I thought he
don't
was
think he's
dead.
dead.
I'm surprised.
All that bourbon
I'm
has
j-
been
his-
the scotch.
Vodka usually,
Vodka.
yeah.
Okay, all right. Well,
Well,
do some
that's-
investigative journalism and figure out if that statistic is real.
Yeah.
Alrighty, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of the Red Moon Podcast. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Right there at the bottom of your screen, check out us on social media. Like, share, subscribe, please, on Red Moon Book or Red Moon Book on Facebook, Red Moon Tweet on X, Red Moon Pics on Instagram, and of course, search for Red Moon Productions on both Rumble and YouTube. We're live there every single week. Thank you all so much. There's also that old-fashioned way to reach out to us. What is it? What is it, Keith? You say it best.
RMPodcast at redmoonproductions.com.
Just love it every time.
If you have complaints about dolphin rape and all that, just email it
If
to
you've
us.
experienced
Please email your complaints to
a
our
dolphin
complaint department.
sexually harassing you, we want to hear about it. Email us, rmpodcast at redmoonproductions.com. Until next time, I'm one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host,
Sean Sebastian.
and
I don't remember that one. I was
Brondell
caught off guard.
Booker.
No, it was Brondell Booker. You're right.
Brondell Booker.
Brondell Booker.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. For more reviews, previous podcast shows, and everything Red Moon, visit our website, redmoonproductions.com. You can also like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter by searching for Red Moon Productions, LLC. We'll see you at the movies.